It's a bad disease, we know. And especially the Indians and Indo-Americans, they fall into the high-risk category. The numbers in India are catching very rapidly here. And, if you translate the casualties by, the number of minutes, it's exceeding a minute every minute. That's much higher than what, has happened in pandemic. Okay. And because the traditional methods, are not working, you get the symptoms, you go through this typical stuff. So the old paradigm of diagnose, treat, and hope for cure, I think time has come to transform that to you screen, you predict, and you prevent. So being proactive about it, I think that's the stuff. And a lot of new exciting techniques, technologies are coming through, liquid biopsies, the next generation sequencing. And most exciting, what is happening in this field is the ability to use the AI and ML and the predictive data analytics to hopefully catch it earlier. As you know, this thing is much better handled when you detect early. Okay. And the whole field is moving through what we call the acceleration of precision medicine, with a hope that we will be able to find cure for cancer, at least for some, and that sort of stuff. So very bullish on the intersection of science and technology, particularly the data science that is transforming this field faster than anyone has able to imagine. And this whole ability, like we say, cancer is as much a disease as a data problem. And being able to apply these multi-omics, deep data analytics techniques, to do early detection is really transforming the field. And, this whole notion of what we call the predictive modeling is really giving us the hope to do the early detection. And of course, the moonshot program, it's not a question of can we find a cure for cancer? It's not an if, it's only a matter of when. But in spite of all this technology, in spite of what's going on in the industry, in spite of all the early detection techniques and these new, liquid biopsies and so on and so forth, one thing remains for sure is prevention is always better than cure. Easier said than done, but that's really what this is all about. I won't belabor you, but cancer to me is like an elephant and six blind men. It's not one disease. There are 5 different categories, 13 different subcategories, and 100 different variants. So it's a complex stuff. It is, heterogeneous, and that old paradigms, are really, not going to sort of work very much. One thing, though, for sure, is if you catch at early stage, for instance, stage 1, okay, you have a 10 times better chance of managing the disease, controlling the disease than stage 2. And, we'll hear from Dr. Sangeeta about this thing. But the whole trick is to avoid it. If you can't avoid it, catch it early and be able to take control and that sort of stuff. I think this is a busy slide, but a very important one, and particularly you have to be proactive, especially if you happen to fall into the high risk categories. Some of my very close family, very relevant to me. I lost my mother-in-law, I lost my sister-in-law, I lost my first cousin, so it's a very high risk category, so I think, self-awareness, self-control, self-management, there's nothing better than that. And you got to be very diligent, you got to be observant and be able to watch and monitor. So a lot of interesting, things here. Maybe in Q&A, we could ask some of the experts as to, what are the symptoms that one should be aware of in terms of, being able to, find something, or have a signal detecting it, or have some alerts so that you can, go to the doctor and take that kind of stuff. Some of the things, we know it's age and inflammation, diet definitely, has shown significant stuff, obesity, exposure to the radiation, The genetics, a lot of people, sort of say, hey, is it the genes, the germline versus the somatic, and some environmental risk factors, they contribute to it. We all know it. I hope we'll shed some light with the experts on the panel as to what we could do. But I thought, the way to take control of it, like I said, prevention is better than cure. Adopting a better lifestyle. And what we say, meds is better than medicines. And we came up with this terminology called Med USA, focusing on meditation, exercise, diet, untethered, freedom from the gadgets. We're all hooked on to this electronic devices. I think we need a little bit of that. Sleep. And last but not the least, most importantly, the attitude. That's very, very key. And you will hear some of the success stories that people, who take control and have a positive attitude of a winner to fight, will win the battle against cancer. So in a nutshell, let me, share my views. I think, 30 years ago when I moved here, HIV was that word. If you hear, people will basically say, count the days. Today, we've won the war against it. It's become a manageable disease. My bet is the way the science and technology are evolving, cancer will become a chronic disease. Okay. And we will transform basically this whole thing of new drugs taking 15 years, much, much less, costing over 3 billion will be 10th. And we've shown that with technology, how, we manage and control this particular stuff, right? With COVID vaccines at a record time, right? So we definitely feel that the technology is going to play a significant role in both reducing the cycle time of the drugs as well as the cost, and that will help the stuff. On the other side, we have this non-invasive screening will become the norm. Things like gut microbiome, and you'll hear from Dr. Kumar, some of the interesting things that are happening. The digital health becoming a norm, that we get access to the patients, access to the expert across the country, around the world. And as well as, I think, the way participation of the clinical trials. It's very important for Indo-American people to think about it. It's very interesting to find out the change in the paradigm that is happening in the minds of pharma companies. Inclusion, diversity, health economics have certainly become important. That's because, think about it, the Indo-Americans represent, close to 18-19% of the world population. The representation of Indo-Americans in clinical trials is less than 0.3%. Okay, so that's not sustainable. That's not really representative stuff. And so it's changing rapidly, and let's be aware and cognizant of that fact. And I think this will help basically increase the participation. And last but not the least, I feel that the way, if you adapt the healthy lifestyle and the science and the technology innovation, I think the average lifespan will exceed 100 years.
So basically, what I want to say is that the cancer, I mean, I'm not the one who is saying it and necessarily, but, as Mohan said before, that it is a big problem. About 18 million people are being diagnosed with cancer every year. And these 5 or 6 cancers actually account for majority of the cancers: lung, breast, colorectal, and prostate cancer. And actually, I'm happy to say that in last few years, we have made some strides in cancer mortality. Since early 2000s, even though the diagnosis of cancer has increased, but the mortality from a cancer is actually going down, except sometime in the, during the COVID time. If I take those 2 years out, I think overall the trend is downwards. So how did we reach this, point, and how can we continue a downward trend? And this is based on the preventive strategies, screening and early detection, and then advancement in cancer treatments and improved survival care. So these are the things that Mohan also talked about, and we will be covering probably in the rest of the year. But February is the cancer prevention month, so we are talking about cancer prevention. Again, like I said, what I'm going to talk about is nothing new. It's a reminder. So very quickly, I'll go through various cancers and what are the risk factors for cancers. So going from breast, and most likely I'm going to forget a lot of the cancers. so hopefully we'll cover them during the Q&A session. So breast. So there are some modifiable risk factors, and there are some non-modifiable risk factors. And I think I'm going to focus on modifiable risk factors, because non-modifiable risk factors such as your gender, your genetics, your those you cannot modify. So, give me 1 second, please. Those are not modifiable risk factors. So what we can do to modify the risk, or some of the points are listed here. So for breast cancer, the modifiable risk factors are exercise. So obesity is a risk factor. So if we can reduce obesity and exercise, that's actually prevention. Alcohol is consistently shown to be increasing the risk of breast cancer. There are 3 consecutive trials that showed that more than 7 glasses of wine per week in an average woman can increase the risk of breast cancer, especially if they have been diagnosed in the past. Late childbirth or not having the children is also a risk factor. May or may not be modifiable, but somebody could look into it and be mindful of it. Breastfeeding is also protective of breast cancer risk. And I want to also put it out, this question I get asked when I'm in medical practice is, do birth control pills increase your breast cancer risk? And there is no data showing that birth control pills increase the risk of breast cancer. On the other hand, hormonal therapy, which is given to, cut down the symptoms of menopause, if it is given for more than 5 years, they have been associated with risk of breast cancer. So again, something to be mindful of. As we all know, lung cancer is associated with smoking, and smoking cessation is the most common preventable risk factor for lung cancer. There are some suggestions that there might be some soil contents that may be associated with increased risk of lung cancer, as we are seeing many patients or many women with lung cancer who never smoked. And I think the research is ongoing. Probably other people might elucidate on this, but I don't have any other data to actually, show you. Similarly, bladder cancer is also associated with smoking and some kind of chronic bladder infection. So don't ignore your bladder infection. Make sure that you get treated for that. Head and neck cancer is smoking and alcohol associated very, very commonly, especially in India and Indian subcontinents. Tobacco chewing is associated, supari chewing is associated with the head and neck cancer. So these are all preventable, strategies that one could keep in mind. One thing I would say, many of the head and neck cancers are HPV infection associated, and now there is a HPV vaccine available. So this is one other reason to opt for HPV vaccine to children or before they become sexually active. Now moving on to esophageal cancer, it is associated with GERD, gastric esophageal reflux. So pay attention and treat the GERD. And again, it is a smoking associated cancer. So, prevention of smoking, smoking cessation would be, would be beneficial in this situation. Similarly, gastric cancer is associated with GERD, but also on the other side, when people take a lot of antacids, specifically we call PPI, proton pump inhibitor, which includes omeprazole, pantoprazole, very prolonged use of these agents can also increase the risk of gastric cancer or stomach cancer. I cannot speak enough about colon cancer. It's been talked about in multiple, talks. Again, known to be associated with high animal fat intake, weight. And so protective factors are high fiber food. And there is a big data about association of colon cancer with microbiome and in, maintaining your microbiome with diet, which includes, yogurt or, uh, you know, and some of the probiotics and prebiotics would be very helpful in colon cancer. I'm going very fast because there are a lot of cancers to talk about, but we can actually elaborate on these things later on. Of course, we know that sun is associated with the sun exposure. This is a long, diagram for colon cancer risk going basically. I don't think I will be able to show this completely. There are hereditary factors such as Lynch syndrome, which increases your risk of death, colon cancer. But down the picture, it was basically saying that the modifiable risk factors is your diet, your exercise, and maintenance of microbiome of the gut. Liver cancer is associated with viral hepatitis B and C, and we have vaccines for hepatitis B, so it's very important. Alcohol associated cirrhosis can lead to liver cancer, and NASH, which is non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, which is basically fat in your liver, and that can lead to development of liver cancer. Some people who have hemochromatosis, like excess iron, genetically more prone to collect iron in their liver, can also develop liver cancer. So these are the things one should be mindful of and pay attention. Again, ovarian cancer is mainly, it's a genetic risk factor, but in ovarian cancer, birth control pills are actually protective. So if someone has a high risk of ovarian cancer, taking birth control pill may be protective. A big thing about cervical cancer, which is most of the time over 90%, is HPV associated. So HPV vaccine is a prevention. And these are prevention strategies. I'm not talking about early detection because that's totally different. These strategies prevent cancer. Mammogram and screening detect cancer, so they don't prevent it. So these are some of the proven medical strategies that are recommended by various, oncology and national cancer guidance societies are listed here. For everyone, HPV vaccine is important and would prevent many of the cervical, head and neck, and anal cancer. Hepatitis B vaccine is preventive for liver cancer, and early treatment of hepatitis C, which is now available, will also prevent the development of hepatocellular carcinoma. There are studies to suggest, the study came out in 2012, that low dose heparin in patients who have a higher risk of colon cancer, especially with families with colon cancer, with Lynch syndrome, with familial polyposis, may reduce their risk by taking low dose aspirin. And then in 2001, multiple studies came out suggesting that in women who are at high risk for developing breast cancer, according to risk calculator models, if your lifetime risk is over 20%, these people can prevent their risk of breast cancer by taking tamoxifen. And of course, if somebody has BRCA1 or 2 mutation, removing breast or ovaries after appropriate, childbirth and will actually prevent the cancer risk.
I am touching here one of the most salient preventive aspects of cancer, because when I started on the preventive aspect some 20 years back, and nobody was interested to be a part of it, because everybody used to say, okay, let it come and we'll do accordingly. But now you can see that, okay, prevention is better than cure. But there are some of the aspects which the prevention has gone down, because the scare of cancer, scare of any disease that we call about heart disease or diabetes or other things. So that is the most important thing. So what I am going to present today is the how we can prevent by not looking at the disease, but looking at the health aspect. So it is, we can call it, we can imbibe the science and technology into this. And I will say one of the most scientific and evidence-based method of prevention. So based on this, what I have to say is in India, the standard of especially the cancer is growing like anything. And I am from southernmost part of India, Kerala, which is, I think, now the cancer capital of India is in Kerala. And the most well-educated and all these people are staying here. But despite all these things, despite all the screening techniques, the cancer rate is very high. And we know that in India, it is 1 out of 9 are expected to get cancer in their lifetime. And as Dr. Sangeeta was telling, and in India, the incidence of cancer breast is highest in females and lung cancer high in males. And we know that early detection. So when you say about early detection, I will be I'm going through my slide, especially when to say that how we can manage in a much better way than going for a detection, because most of the screening is for the early diagnosis. So early diagnosis is the most important problem, because when you say, okay, we can go and detect for cancer, early detection for cancer, people are reluctant to come because they are scared. So I would like to impress upon this, because education or awareness is the most important thing. And to make everyone understand that, okay, cancer is not just a disease, but it is a disorder of mainly of many of the internal faculties of every human being. So we have to learn, we have to understand, we have to assess, and we have to improve our personal health. So as you know all, because everything under the sun is actually producing one of the cause for cancer. There is nothing which has gone behind this. So you can say that it is getting more and more difficult to find out which is. So you should not look outside. We have to look inside. That is why I put this term as nutrigenomics for prevention aspect. So if you really look in the genetic aspect, we know that most of the cancer-causing DNA changes carry the instructions to make proteins, or you can call it as a specialized RNA, such as microRNA. So a lot of things have gone in the research of genetics and genome studies, and we know that microRNA as is having all the instructions to produce cancer. The study of how food affects a person's genes and how a person's genes affect the way the body responds to food. And these two things actually match, because the way it is being, because every culture, every geographical differences is there, especially on the type of food you consume. And the food has to affect your genes. So when you change the food, especially depending upon the geographical or the modern world, so that is not actually matching with our genetic expression or the genes. So nutrigenomics is used to learn more about how genes and diet together may affect a person's health and the risk of developing disease such as cancer. So you can see that genes come in the center of your external environment and your internal environment. External environment, as you know, air, water, and food, and all the other things that you're seeing outside. And internal, most of the things we are not seeing. We know that because most of the, especially Dr. Sangeeta was talking about hormones and biochemical reactions, and hormones, biochemistry, and both these things leading to your health or your disease. So the genes come into center, they're acting as an interface. So we have to understand this is whether it is, even now it is, we are also leading with pharmacogenomics, especially medicines are also according to the gene expression. So if you really look, DNA is the most important molecule in the body. So evolution has made sure it is very well protected. So you can see it is present inside the nucleus, which is very, very deep inside your cell, and it is protected from all the damages. But despite all this protection, we are now damaging your DNA. Cancer cells have got very, very unstable DNA. That is what we have seen. Because if you really look at the mutation of the genes, you can see a lot of varieties of mutation for the same cancer in different individuals. So this means that, okay, this mutation is changing constantly. This is why so many mutations are found in cancer cells. And most tumor cells are growing faster than most of their healthy neighboring cells. But this is not because they are superior, it is because they are going unregulated. Why the normal cells cannot grow as fast as the cancer cells? Because all the healthy cells around the tumor cells are capable of growing just as fast, but there are checks and balances in place to prevent them from growing like a cancer cell. But when necessary, they can grow faster. So you can see in a liver injury, an acute liver injury, healthy cells need to grow rapidly to replace the injured cells, and they grow at a rate faster enough to just like a tumor progression. So you can see when there's an injury, the cells might grow faster. So it depends upon your need. So any cell can do it, but only thing is that it is the need. And when it is unregulated like cancer, it goes multiplies and multiplies. And when you say about the various markers, so when we look into the system of how you know that okay you are going to get a cancer or how you can understand. So what we say it is not that looking for a cancer marker. Instead of that, we are looking at the nutrigenomics, which corresponds to the use of biochemistry, physiology, and nutrition. And as Dr. Mohan was telling about all the omics which is coming nowadays, is genomics, proteomics, metabolomics, and transcriptomics. All these are coming to explain a lot of things, lot of biology of cancer. We have to seek and explain the existing reciprocal interventions between the genes and nutrients at a molecular level. So a lot of markers have come, especially we call it nutrigenomic markers like MTHFR, genes, BRCA, and metabolic markers like we use a lot of metabolic markers like CRP, various ratios between biochemistry and hormones, all the cancer antigens and other things which we can use as a metabolic marker. And when you say about molecular markers, especially for personalized medicine, which we are talking today, the era is of just personalized and precision medicine. So your health should be precise. As we are living in a very, very fast world, we have to understand that our precision should be so strong. So molecular markers are just fragments of DNA which are genetic signaling for various alterations that can happen inside your cell. So this type of alterations and this type of things can happen. So these molecular markers are also going to come in future, which can be very easily. It is not saying it is a marker for early detection of cancer, but it is actually saying your metabolism is in balance so that you can correct it and you can prevent the formation of cancer. So nutrigenomics is the basis of actually we call it as the precision health or personalized health. And nutrients actually involved with the epigenetic expression. So what we call is the nutrients, especially any food that you consume, it is going into the cell, not outside the cellular markers. It is going inside the cell and actually work as per the genetics and as per the genetic expression. We call it as epigenetics. Actually, genes are innocent victims of cancer. They are damaged, destabilized, and randomly mutated by cancerous process because of various food materials that is going in and various other environmental agents actually trespass to our cell through these food materials. So there could be a link. We know that there is between damaged mitochondria and cancer, because mitochondrial dysfunction is considered as one of the most important cause for energy failure, and because of that, it can produce the difference in the protein manufacture and one of the early signals of cancer production. So when you really look, what we are looking at is assess the metabolic risk factor. That is what we are doing, especially in a routine, because we are not looking at the cancer screening, especially for this, but we look at the metabolic risk factors. If needed, we can even we are not routinely doing epigenetic risk factors, but until otherwise, somebody is very strong enough, if they want a definite opinion, you can do the epigenetic risk factor, especially genomic analysis, which is little expensive. But assessing the metabolism, cellular metabolism is very, very important. And we can assess the risk factors of complications which have already diagnosed cancer. So there are people who are coming with cancer, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and we have to know that whether this patient can go in for any complication. So again, this is the risk factors which we used to do, especially by the special analysis. We call it as genometabolic analysis. And we just do the metabolic profile and metabolic balancing factors. And based on that, we have to Also, we have to understand what every person or every individual is different, especially when a diet is concerned or lifestyle is concerned. So we will be looking at the lifestyle and nutritional assessment of each and every person. So evidence from the recent molecular studies indicates that circulating tumor cells, especially Dr. Mohan was talking about liquid biopsy, and this is very, very potential surrogate markers of a systemic disease. And even 1% of the maybe circulating tumor cell is enough to, which is coming from the cancer cells, is enough you can detect. So CTC thus constitute a seed for the subsequent growth of additional tumor and metastasis, and you can detect it much earlier, especially in already diagnosed cancer patients who are going for further treatment, or you can see that okay, you need any further treatment for the cancer and other things that is. So one of the most important thing that I am just stressing here is early detection, because Dr. Sangeeta was telling about one thing, screening. Screening is very essential. So only in a risk case we say early detection. Otherwise, you can say you screen for your health and your metabolic profile, metabolic balance, and if you correct the metabolic balance. So that is the most significant thing. So if you really look at the internal cause for cancer, I am not talking about the external cause. You can see it can be epigenetic. So genetics will give the order. And then it can be metabolic. So metabolic disorder. It can be a mitochondrial disorder. It can be, especially Dr. Sanghi was talking about virus and human papilloma virus and all those things. So infective cause. So it could be a mixture of all these things. It is not just HPV. All HPV is not getting cancer. And same thing, all mitochondrial dysfunction is not getting cancer. So you can see everything combines together to form one of the most deadly disease that we talk about today. And this can be because of this diverse variety of internal origin. We can understand that we can very easily manage this, provided we understand, because today's latest development in science, that is why I normally say it has to be integrated, integration of science with medicine, because the scientific knowledge has to come to the practice of medicine. Then only we have to, because especially cellular biology and epigenetics and also biochemistry, biophysics, all these have to come forward for the management of cancer, especially preventing cancer, which is very, very easy. So we can see that, especially when I am talking here, especially on nutrigenomics, okay, what are the type of food that especially for the real solution for prevention. So you have to understand that most important thing is mainly for digestion, and digestive enzymes or digestive acids that is necessary for the stomach should be there. And today we know that, okay, especially Dr. Sangeeta was telling about unethical use of antacids and protein pump inhibitors, which is very, very high. And I know from the statistics in Kerala, the highest number of protein pump inhibitors are being consumed by people living here, and they are getting the highest incidence of stomach cancer and also colon cancer. And we can say that, okay, all these things that is going into the cells, which goes to the mitochondria to produce energy. And this energy is used by other intracellular organelles to manufacture protein. And this actually produces the intracellular structural function. So this sets in vibration, we send in signals, culminates in the organ function and human life. And this is controlled by millions of biochemical reactions that is happening in your cells, and this is controlled by hormones. And which we know that hormones are the chemical messengers of human mind. That means from the mind decides, neurotransmitters take it over and transmit it to the hormones or endocrine glands to have it. And all these are under the control of your DNA. It's a master's role. So just to say that, okay, diet plays a big role, especially in prevention. And you have to understand that, okay, this is actually happening in various, from the DNA aspect from the epigenetic aspect to the digestion, and also in the various metabolic process. So what we normally do, we actually give a lot of awareness and education program about the person and about their life, how the life is being created. So that is the most important thing. So the real prevention is understanding the inner cause. It is not looking at the external factors. We all talk about environment, this is that is, and everything is causing this, but you have to be powerful enough from inside. So especially when in nutrigenomics, or especially when you're talking about our cells. Yeah. especially when we are talking about ourselves, we have to understand that this is the early real prevention, and we actually give the personalized cellular diet. And there is another type of diet which we call it as the biophoton rich diet. Biophoton is nothing but food that has got life. Then we advise on the amount of physical exercise, because that has to be given as a prescription. So the amount of physical exercise and what type of relaxation like yoga, meditation, other things to be thing. And if at all necessary, the dietary supplements should support all these things, if at all you are necessary. So this is the way in which actually you can actually prevent most of the cancers, and I think most of the internal markers for cancer can be avoided like this. So this is the in principle.
Dr. Shikumar, you have a little time crunch here. So
Okay. This is the last slide. This is what we do, especially various processes like detoxification, genetic expression, integration of the cellular function. We use all these things. And so this is the conclusion is we have to conclude to begin a new, better life for happiness, personalized prevention, education, self-help measures, guided measures. And when in doubt, doctors have to come in, otherwise it is self-help. And I think for any further questions, I'm here. Thank you very much for a patient hearing.
People who are ill, especially people who have who have cancer, has a shortage of CO2. The level of carbon dioxide in the lungs is lower than it's supposed to be. In the lungs is insufficient, a person is ill. If it's normal, a person is completely healthy. If it's higher than normal, a person enjoys really good health and long life. The Buteyko breathing method was often used to prevent cancer, and in some cases to reduce cancer, to cure cancer. And there are many testimonials from people who were successful at achieving this goal. Tell you about some important, extremely important actually, characteristics of healthy breathing, which allows a person to maintain a high level of CO2 or prana. Number one, we as human beings are supposed to breathe through the nose only. The second option of breathing through the mouth is given to us in case of emergencies. So if you need to run really fast to save your life, definitely breathe through your mouth. It's totally appropriate. But if you're breathing through your mouth in a regular situation, or when you are stressed, then you are creating stress for your body. The body reacts to mouth breathing as stress. So it's absolutely important to start breathing through the nose 100%. That means during the day, during the night. Some people snore, some people have sleep apnea. All of this happens because of mouth breathing at night. So that needs to be stopped, and I usually help people to do that. And also, it's really important to establish nasal breathing while doing physical exercise. If a person breathes through their mouth while exercising, in most cases, this person will be losing CO2, and the result of the exercise will be negative. A person will be building his or her muscles, the same time losing their health. So nasal breathing 100%. The next thing is breathing is supposed to be silent, because we can hyperventilate even through the nose. So if a person breathes through the nose audibly, noisily, like this, It's also hyperventilation, and it also results in a loss of our vital energy, or CO2. The next thing, which is important to practice all the time, is invisible breathing. Many people, nothing in the body should move because of breathing. It's not like this, it's not like this, and the belly even should not move. And the last thing, which maybe is the most important, that people are supposed to breathe the same way as wild animals. It means that breathing never should be non-stop. If a person is truly healthy, breathing stops naturally after every exhale, after every exhalation. And this knowledge helps to establish healthy breathing. And healthy breathing is a very strong, solid foundation for optimal health. Thank you so much.